Hey everyone! In this video we're going to keep talking about the principles for reading and writing. Specifically we're going to talk about the given new principle. So by the end of this video you should be able to define the properties of the given new principle and apply the given new principle to improve your academic literacy. Again, your reading and writing. So again, why are we doing this? The reason why is because this is often how we structure information. I mean, as we talk, pay attention to how people give you information. They'll tell you something that you should already know, and then they will tell you something that you do not know. The reason we do this is because that is just how we process information. If you give us new information and then given information, you're going to confuse us because we're going to be confused about the new stuff, and then you'll give us the given stuff and we'll say, I already know that, I don't care. So again, it's about telling you what you already know and how to add on to it. Because again, that's just how humans learn, and low-key, this is basically how everything is structured. So let's get into it. The given new principle is a way of creating cohesion between sentences and paragraphs, between sections, etc. You can keep building out from there by using information that readers know to introduce new information. And again, this really happens at a sentence level. So let's look at what that means. What is given information? This is information that you should know, or that you, the writer, have told them somewhere else in the paper already. And this is usually somewhere that's going to come in like the about principle. So usually somewhere near the beginning of the sentence. And you can basically ask yourself these questions. Is the information stated in the text somewhere? Is this information suggested by the text? Like a reasonable person should be able to put two and two together? Is the information something that a reader should readily know or be able to deduce easily? Like, if it's something that we should all know that the United States was founded in 1776, you can sort of, take that for granted that we know that. You don't really have to go into a whole sentence about 1776 was a very important year because that's the year the United States declared independence. Yeah, we know. We know all of that. So again, these are the sort of three questions you, when you're writing, want to ask yourself to determine if something is given information. If something is new information, that's information that you, the writer, are assuming is new. It might not be, but you can assume based off of the audience that you are trying to write to that they would not necessarily know this. And you will often put that information in an emphasis position in your sentence. So again, you need to think about who your audience is, what might they know, what might not they know, and you're going to have to make some assumptions. But what you don't want to do is insult our intelligence too much or assume that we know more than we do. So again, it's kind of a fine line here, and you will get better the more you practice this. So let's look at the structure of this, because I kind of want to show you what it could look like. So this is basically one of the ways that the given new principle would operate. You start with information that we know, and we'll just call that point 0. Here's what readers should kind of know to get started. And then we emphasize a new piece of information. Then we take that piece of information, and it becomes the beginning of our next about. So in our next sentence, we usually will start that sentence the way the previous sentence ended, so that they flow together. The emphasis becomes the about, and then this emphasis will then become this about, and this emphasis will become this about. So this is just one way of structuring the flow of your sentences, that they flow cohesively, uniformly from one idea into the next. This is also how paragraphs would operate as well. You could also do this slightly different version, where again, you start with the base information, you introduce something new. This is an optional step, it doesn't have to happen. You could just start with A, as you'll see here in a second. But A introduces a new piece of information about A, then you start again with A, this introduces a new piece of information about it. The next sentence starts with A, it introduces a new piece of information, then A, new piece of information. So again, you can just see this is another way of doing it, where the given information is constantly occupying the about position. Both of these are equally valid. And again, this is just kind of what this would look like. You can even make it a little bit more complicated, as you'll see later on, where you could go from A to A to B, B to C, C to A to D, D to B, B to C. You can see that there is a flow in this, because we go we might take out this one. Actually, I kind of noticed this one doesn't totally make the most sense, because we go A, and then B connects back to D, and we try to connect B and C back together. I doubled up. So one of those doesn't make sense. I think it's obviously that one, because you can see that C here doesn't lead into A. So that's kind of problematic. So okay, different ways of doing it. You kind of just need to think about how the ideas in the emphasis position flow into an about position. That's really the goal here. So let's look at how this works. So if we start here, we have disciplinary disciplinary literacy as what we're talking about. We know because we're reading it. This disciplinary literacy that links a collaborative inquiry cycle with an established model of reading comprehension is the new information that we're introducing. And this is maybe what we would just call our A is A. It's just taking what we should know and telling us something new. This might also be zero if you wanted to think about it that way. If we move into our next sentence, it starts with it. Well, what is it? If that's the given information that we have, well, what is that talking back to? It's talking about disciplinary literacy. So we're going with A because we're keeping the same subject, and we're going to introduce new information in the rest of that paragraph. That it, disciplinary literacy, is making the case for disciplinary literacy. That seems a little redundant. So we actually have this part here that is going to elaborate what we mean by that. Arguing that it focuses on discipline-specific ways of blah, 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 blah. And so whenever you have a verb that does this, arguing, saying, something like that, we need to make sure that it connects back to the subject of that sentence. It begins by making, it argues that. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. If these are two different things, you need to change it. So now we can go into the next sentence. This is followed. What is this? What is followed by a chapter? Well, it doesn't make sense that, disciplinary literacy is followed by a chapter because it's the whole book. So we want to ask ourselves, well, what exactly is this? And this is actually just connecting back to the previous new information. So this is our B, and then the rest of that sentence is introducing C, our new information that it's outlining a framework. Then we go into the next one, the inquiry framework outlines. Well, what inquiry framework? That's connecting back to that new information. So we're sifting into C here. We go A to B, B to C, C to D, and then we're introducing our new information to D, that the inquiry framework outlines a cyclical process, that blah, 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 blah. And we can take that and we can see here that this sentence is the collaborative inquiry cycle. This is scenic information. It's not new information, but it might be for some people. If you're in the discipline itself, you probably already know this. But what is this collaborative inquiry cycle? Well, that is connecting back to our previous new information. So we're going from D to E. So you can kind of actually see, if you look at it, the organization of this might at first look like it doesn't make sense, but it's actually just a zigzag. Yeah, and so the next one would maybe start with E, and then it would introduce F. And then F would introduce G. I don't know. The paragraph ends there. So, I don't know. But you can see that there is an internal logic here, even if it's not super obvious and in your face. Information. Okay, so here's all the new information we learn about disciplinary literacy, inquiry, and instruction. That it's a new approach, that it's part of a collaborative inquiry cycle, that it uses an established model of reading, that it has disciplinary specific ways of communicating across grades, that it proposes a framework for these disciplinary literacies, that it talks about a cyclical process, connected to that one sort of, that it's focusing on questions, background knowledge, idea generation, revision. That's, again, the established models of reading, if you knew that. So again, we wouldn't put these as two pieces of information probably. That it's focusing on newness, and that it's challenging fundamental assumptions, and that it's trying to help teachers create adaptive changes. So again, we can go through here and we can see that some of these are doubling up. Collaborative inquiry cycle, cyclical process, questions and background, that's an established mode of reading. Disciplinary ways of communicating across blah, 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 that's that framework. So you can start to see that we can actually group several of these ideas together and create a more cohesive or shorter summary. So if you look at how they do it, this is their topic sentence, and I think it actually does a really good job of mostly capturing all of that. Disciplinary literacy and inquiry and instruction proposes an approach to disciplinary literacy that links a collaborative inquiry cycle with an established model of reading comprehension. And I'm adding this to help teachers, because if you do that, you very clearly and obviously hit every single one of these elements. So again, I think this is doing a good job. I don't know that I could summarize this paragraph any better than they did. So as we wrap up, let's just review some stuff here. That when writers use the given new principle, they're really using the about and emphasis principle to reconstruct it. The given principle is usually the given information is usually the about, and the new information is usually in the emphasis position. Doesn't have to be, but that's usually what happens. That as you're writing, you must decide what is given information and what is new information based off of the readers that you are trying to talk to. Who is your audience? What might they know? You can't just say, I'm writing for my professor, I'm writing for Professor Bolt. Imagine, use your brain, use your creativity, think of somebody beyond me. Who do you want to talk to? What do they not know? Then writers use this principle to move between ideas, not only between sentences, but also within paragraphs. And Writers selectively ignore this rule to disrupt reading experiences and potentially call attention to new information. So again, if you don't follow this, maybe sometimes you put the new information at the beginning. That might be disruptive enough to be like, wow, that's a really effective way of doing it. To be fair, that is much harder, and I do not encourage you to try that. Practice doing it in the normal flow, because honestly, low-key, that's what most people like. So as we review, we just want to ask ourselves, what is the give and do principle? How does it connect to the aboutness and the emphasis principle? How do you use the give and do principle when reading, and similarly when writing? And then again, if you have any questions or wish you understood something better, what is that? And email it to me at kbolt@elgin.edu. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.